watched my video on how to make shaker doors, this is going to be very similar, but I'm going to do some things a little differently. For example, here I am cutting all the tongues and grooves using a single saw blade instead of a dado stack, because I understand a lot of people may not have a dado stack or have a table saw that can accept one. Here I am using my setup blocks to set up for the first cut. Just like the shaker doors, it's going to be a 1/4 inch deep groove, and right now I'm going to set it up to be a 1/4 inch in on the material. Having setup blocks makes making these cuts very easy. I just place a 1/4 inch setup block between the fence and the blade, run the fence right over and lock it in place. Here I am making the first cut. As you can see, because I use the setup block, that first cut is a perfect 1/4 inch into the workpiece. Here I am just moving the fence over slightly to make one more pass, exactly one blade width wide. Once I make that pass, I'll just check it against my 1/4 inch setup block, and as you can see, it's still a little narrow, so I'll set up for a third pass on the saw and take one more blade width off, maybe even just half of a blade width. And as you can see, it's a nice perfect fit. Next, I'll run all of my pieces through one at a time. I'm going to put my fence back to the original 1/4 inch distance and run every piece through before moving my fence. Then once I make one pass, I'll bump the fence over and run every piece again. It's important to make sure you always reference the same side of your workpiece off the fence through every pass that you make. Once I put a groove or mortise in every one of these pieces, I'll set up to cut all of the tongues or tenons. The tenons get cut in the rails, which will be the top pieces that run horizontally. In this case, they're going to be the longer pieces. When we made our shaker style doors, the stiles were the longer vertical pieces and the rails were the shorter horizontal pieces, just because of the orientation of the doors versus a drawer face. Here I am using my one blade method to cut all these tenons. It's a little more time consuming, but I just wanted to show it can be done using a single saw blade. This is just a normal saw blade. It's got an alternate tooth bevel and does not have a flat grind tooth, meaning there may be little ridges left behind after I'm done cutting. So I just take a sanding block and smooth everything down once I'm done. Then I go ahead and test fit all of my frames together. As you can see, it's a nice snug fit. Once I get all my frames fit together, I'll go ahead and measure for the panel. I just measure the inside of the opening and then add a 1/2 inch to each dimension to account for a 1/4 inch groove all the way around. With the drawer faces, we're not going to use 1/4 inch material for the panel like we did on the doors. We're going to use 1/2 inch instead. With the 1/2 inch material, we're going to have to cut a recess all the way around the outside of the panel that'll be a 1/4 inch deep and a 1/4 inch wide. This is known as a rabbet. It's basically the same as a dado, but usually on the edge of a workpiece. After we get all the panels ripped down on the table saw, I'll make my final cuts on the miter saw like usual. Here I am using my stop block just to get everything dialed in. Here I am just eyeballing the fit, and it looks good. Next we go over to the router table and we set up to make our rabbet. Here I have a 3/4 inch rabbeting bit, and I use the setup block as well as one of the work pieces to adjust the depth to a 1/4 inch to make sure that rabbet is going to line up perfectly with the edge of the workpiece. I then take my fence and adjust it over to make sure that it's going to be a 1/4 inch wide as well, and then run a test piece through the router table. As you can see, our rabbet fits right into that drawer face, and the back will be nice and flush so it can screw into when we put it on the drawers. With the test piece complete, I take my workpiece and I finish everything permanently. If you don't have a router table, don't worry. Here I am doing the same thing on my table saw with a single blade. just like I ran the mortises and tenons. Now if you have a dado stack, you can certainly use that for this. It would be a lot faster. But here I just want to demonstrate that it's possible to make all these cuts just with a single saw blade. As always, I'll always start with a test piece. I run one cut, 1/4 inch, into the workpiece. Then I slowly move the piece away from the fence, removing all the material. If you have a small gap between your rabbet and the frame of the door, don't worry about it, because A, this is going to be up against the drawer box and no one will see it, and you can always fill it before you paint these. I do a quick dry fit on all these drawer faces, and then I take everything apart so I can sand the front face of the panels before I glue them together. It's obviously a pain to sand inside the panel once everything's glued up. MDF is pretty smooth. You can usually go right to 180 with it and just spend a little extra time sanding and get the desired finish. Or if you're painting, you can go to 220. Once everything's sanded down, I glue it up just like I glue up any door or drawer face. Using some Titebond 3, I just apply a little bit of glue to the tenons and also in the part of the mortise that's going to receive the tenon. I don't go all the way to the edge because I want to prevent getting some squeeze out on the panel because it'll be a pain to clean up off the MDF. You only need a very little bit of glue to hold these together. They're going to be very strong. I like using this silicone glue brush because once you're done, you just let the glue dry on the brush and then you can just peel it off once it's dry and reuse it for the next project. I got a link in the description if you're interested. I think it was like $7 or $8 on Amazon. Definitely worth it. Once all the glue's in place, I use my parallel clamps and clamp the joints in all directions, making sure everything is nice and square. Obviously, if you don't have parallel clamps, you can use any type of clamps that you have. Those are just the clamps that I have the most of, so I use them for almost everything. And once everything's glued up in clamps and squared up, you just let them dry and then they're ready to finish and install. If you didn't watch my video on building cabinets and installing the drawer faces, go ahead and check that out now. Other than that, that's it for this video. Short, sweet, and to the point. I hope you enjoyed it. Don't forget to like it and subscribe to the channel if you haven't already. Thanks again for watching, and we'll see you next time.